And let's see what Sabine has to say about China discovers 6,000 years supply of thorium. That's a lot of thorium.
A geological survey in China has found thorium supplies that could power the country for 60,000 years. This big news circulated through the media last week. How important is this finding? Let's have a look. The news came from the South China Morning Post and from there spread rapidly all over the world. The Morning Post claims to have seen a declassified report of a survey from 2020, according to which the Bayan Obo mining complex in the Inner Mongolia region of China could yield 1 million tons of thorium from mining waste. This would mean that China has the world's largest thorium reserves and would put it on top of the list ahead of India, Australia, Brazil, and the United States. If thorium ever becomes an important natural resource, this would give a lot of economic power to China. And it could become an important resource because thorium can be used for nuclear fission. It's basically a vast supply of carbon dioxide-free energy. Using thorium...
Yeah, I mean, thorium is really useful because it's molten salt reactors, so it doesn't generate as much energy per unit quantity as uranium reactors. And I did a lot of research in this because I went down the whole rabbit hole a few years ago. And the reason why they use uranium reactors in the US, it's a twofold reason. Mainly people are focusing on the fact that the byproducts are weaponizable, so it can be weaponized. And so it's a convenient way of transferring your technology or your production into weapons, which is clearly, you know, it has an impact, right? That influences, but mainly what the Atomic Energy Commission or whatever it is in the US, what they state officially is that the reason why they went with uranium over thorium like 40, 50 years ago and pushed it very hard and selected it as the nuclear source to go for is because there's a lot more uranium that can be mined in the oceans than they expected was expected thorium that they expected. There's a lot of expecteds in sand and stuff. So yeah.
For nuclear reactors has several advantages.
But after all the breakdowns and meltdowns and stuff like that, I think this is a big result. This is not a nothing.
Over the currently more commonly used uranium. One is that there's about 3 to 4 times more thorium in the Earth's crust. It also...
So it's actually kind of sad because if the US had pushed thorium, I mean, yes, there's research that needs to be done on how to make the pipes more resistant against salt corrosion, but if they had spent like 3-4 decades working on that, this would have been a solved problem, like well solved, well mature, into probably 4th, 5th generation power plants where, you know, pipe corrosion was not even an issue anymore. And the thorium design and overall process is very elegant. And so in terms of being energy independent, we could have been, like America could have been like well down that road. And the reason why China is going for this is because it's nice to have solar and wind and all that stuff, but you want sort of like a turnkey, always on, irrespective of weather or sunshine or whatever. So it's a good result.
It can't be as readily used for nuclear weapons, though if you make some effort, that's still possible. The real advantage of thorium reactors is, however, that they can use essentially the entire fuel, not just a small fraction of it, as is the case with the uranium reactors. This means that the energy you can extract from a certain mass of thorium is much higher than for the same mass of uranium. Thorium itself is not fissile, which means you can't run a chain reaction with thorium alone. You need to start the reaction with some other element. Typically, one uses uranium. However, that requires far less enriched uranium. This too is a big advantage because enriched uranium has become really expensive and the main supplier is Russia. For this reason, thorium reactors have attracted attracted a lot of interest recently. China has already been running a small thorium reactor for a few years. This has been a test project with merely 2 megawatts.
I started tracking this before they even launched that thorium reactor, and I thought that the US would make some big moves, but US has been really slow to move. And then I don't know why we're digging into why our focus currently is on random stuff. People are distracted by what's it called, like Social Security for senior citizens, stuff like that. I mean, this is what we should be focused on.
Megawatts of power. I assume things went as planned because this year they want to start building a bigger demonstration reactor with 10 megawatts in power. That's supposed to be operational by 2030. And after that, I guess they'll go to small modular reactors of 100 megawatts or so. These thorium reactors.
I mean, the basic principle is they're just moving forward on, I mean, they are doing it the right way. They are moving forward on multiple verticals to see what the actual on-ground results would be, and if someone makes a big breakthrough or if there are any issues. Because at the end of the day, if it works, it works. You know, as long as you move away from oil and you've got, green energy, it doesn't make so much of a difference, at least in the medium term, whether it's, this solution or that solution or, So they're just trying everything and seeing how they can move forward to get energy oil and energy independence from oil. And then we live in a very bizarre world where it looks like China's taking the lead in clean tech.
Are molten salt reactors, a type of design that powers itself down automatically in case the cooling system fails.
It's really elegant design. I mean, whoever came up with this, kudos to them. And it's just such a shame that the US didn't follow through with this.
This all sounds great. So could you power China from thorium for 60,000 years? Probably yes.
Yes.
But how revolutionary is this finding really? It's hard to say precisely because, unfortunately, I've not been able to find the report.
Yeah, I mean, some of these results are a little bit sketchy, but usually if it makes it to the site, to that newspaper, it's usually fairly authentic in my experience. And again, I think because of it being such a key and sensitive issue, I think the Chinese government is going to limit how much information is shared, but it's a great result to share. So they'll share it, but they'll limit the details on the specifics. And 60,000 years, I'm always a little bit skeptical about, because it's 60,000 based on current usage and maybe current projections of energy use cases. But but still 60,000 years of current energy uses. So even if it goes up by a factor of 10, that's 6,000 years. So it buys a lot of time to find the next energy source, and this is a great result for them.
That the Morning Post writes about. 1 million tons sounds like a lot for a single site. Just for comparison, the entire country of India has an estimated 1 million tons. That said, the Morning Post also says that the survey identified in total more than 230 thorium sites in China, and quite possibly the reason that the reported reserves in India are much lower is that they simply haven't done such a survey. So
Yes.
I think the Chinese number is plausibly
Well, also, I think physically China, we can look at the maps, but China is physically, so let's see, maps, Google. If we zoom out, oh Lord, and we zoom in over here, just physically China has a lot more surface area than India does. So there's, it has a bigger chance of finding stuff, and it's got all this desert over here, and so it is a larger landmass than India. So it's I guess twice or something like that if you just eyeball it. So it's not such a surprising result. At the same time, India could do surveys and find even more. It could be, for some reason, more dense in thorium. But again, even if this is it, this is like a super result for China. Good for them, man. Good for them.
Approximately correct. But there is a reason why the world isn't running on thorium yet. It's that scientists and engineers have tried molten salt reactors a few times starting in the 1960s, and that didn't go all that well. The biggest problem is that the molten salts are highly corrosive and degrade the material they come into contact with quickly. In the past 50
Yeah, but this is my point, right? If as much money had been put into thorium research and molten salt reactor research, I'm 100% sure we would have solved this problem a long time ago and been on to like third, fourth generation of corrosive resistant materials. So
years, researchers have developed alloys that are more corrosion resistant and have also tried to find more benign molten salt mixtures. So some progress has been made, but I think it's fair to say that the technology isn't quite there yet. It's still very much in the exploration phase.
Right, again, because they did not fund it. And I did watch a lot of videos of and there were some people who were pushing thorium for decades now, and they compared the research funding, the resources made available between uranium and other alternative energy sources and thorium. And I mean, already alternative energy sources, the US didn't put that much research into until fairly recently, I guess. But yeah, it would have developed a lot faster if they had made thorium like a top 5 priority to figure out, and it would have been a much better solution than uranium, a lot safer. So it's just very strange that they didn't pick that as the go-to, like this is what we want to develop, because it's just a single breakthrough that they need, just corrosion resistant materials or something of that sort, or an updated design. It just would have made a lot more sense.
You may wonder why, if molten salts are such a headache, don't we just use thorium in some other sort of reactor? One of the reasons, as I already mentioned, is that the molten salt reactors are particularly safe. But another reason is that the temperature and pressure range which they operate in make the thorium reaction more efficient. If you use, for example, a pressurized water reactor, that's the currently most commonly used type, then you need more of the enriched uranium to keep the thorium reaction going. It's kind of like saying you can charge an electric car with a diesel generator. Possible, but not a good sales point. Despite the challenges, thorium reactors are a promising power source. China is not the only country which has seen this. The United States has several test projects and startups, so has the UK and several other countries.
But in fairness, the U.S. is behind. So China, the only reason this has happened is because the Chinese launched and started building and actually opened a working thorium reactor is one of the reasons why this, Horizon and other efforts like this got funded in the U.S. Because up to that point, they were just. I mean, you can watch on YouTube. You can just Google and look for thorium from a few years ago. There's this guy, I forgot his name, but he used to go and give presentations and pitches to the government like every year, all the time, really evangelizing for thorium for decades on end. And initially when he started off, he thought, it's a no-brainer, they just don't understand. That's the thing, so he was a little bit naive because he thought like, oh, if I just explain this to the government, if I explain this to Congress or whatever, once they see the utility and like, oh my God, this is great, they'll move forward on it. But he kept getting thwarted, shut down, runarounds, doing busy work, stuff like that. And like so many other things, it wasn't until a competitor went ahead and did something that America kind of woke up. So, I mean, I up to this point, I think your analysis is a little bit disingenuous. Because thorium has not really been given a fair shot in the West.
But while we wait for the thorium revolution, keep on dusting the solar panels. Last year, I coincidentally noticed that if you asked Google for my cell phone number, it gave you an.
Okay, so now she's okay. 5 minutes in, so 5.5 minutes of material and 1.5 minutes of advertising. I guess it's something to present, but no, thorium is a very exciting. It could be a very exciting material and or medium for fission reactors. So, uh, in terms of potential energy sources beyond coal, right? You would have fission, fusion, and then something beyond fusion, and that something beyond fusion. Then you're going into kind of like science fiction. That sort of stuff that was considered to be completely like woo stuff, um, until it appears that there are UFOs and UAPs, and I've never seen one, so I can't vouch for it. But the evidence seems compelling right now, based on all of these these I guess military personnel and Navy pilots, and now commercial pilots coming forward and sharing their stories and other stories, and other aspects as well. But so beyond fusion, it seems that there could be something like just 0 point energy from vacuum itself, and I mean that's a whole other discussion on if it's possible or not, because a lot of things seemed impossible at a certain slice in history, and then you fast forward a few years as a breakthrough, and it's like, oh my god, of course, of course it was possible, of course we could fly, like, oh my god, like nowadays, like, of course we can fly, everyone knows you can fly, right? Why were people ever stupid enough to think that if we flew in, if we got that fast, like doctors actually believed like 50 to 100 years ago, maybe 100 years ago, that if humans were to travel faster than the speed of sound or close to the speed of sound, that we would just explode, that our blood vessels would just spontaneously collapse because we're not built for such speed, without any evidence as such, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of, science always looks extremely barbaric if you go back like a few decades back. So, just the same way, so if you just assume like we're a few decades ahead and you look back at 2025, it could well be that it'd be like, oh wow, man, of course you can get 0 point vacuum energy, you know what I mean? You can just suck it right out of the vacuum itself. And, there is an argument to be made that it is possible to do that, because Heisenberg's uncertainty principle just states the uncertainty of energy and time. But it doesn't put like a strong limit, so it doesn't put an upper bound, it only puts a lower bound. And so you can borrow as much energy as you want, but the uncertainty in which you get it is going to be fantastically it doesn't have to be fantastically small, it's just a lower bound. So there are parts of physics which leave the door wide open to further exploration. And I think this is one of the aspects where it gets interesting. So in terms of moving forward to next generation energy, sure, you can dust your solar panels, but it's not going to be that effective. You want a source that's just robust and strong, and which is why oil was so attractive after a certain point. Initially, oil was considered, people laughed at oil as an energy source because it was dirty, it was sticky, it was messy. How are you going to transport it from point A to point B? No one had ever guessed that it would become this dominant source of energy that it is today. No one would ever have assumed that we would run all the vehicles that we do across the world on this like sticky, smelly, disgusting, hard to extract and hard to transport a material. But lo and behold, it happened. And so moving one step beyond that, if we were to do it stepwise and not leapfrog, you would say, well, we're not close to fusion right now, so we need to use fission for the next few decades until there's a fusion breakthrough, right? Because quite possibly you're not going to make any of these major breakthroughs until the rest of the sciences have had their, mini breakthroughs, right? So until technology is at a certain point, you're not going to figure out the next breakthrough, right? So like you're never going to discover and be able to use lasers until you get very good at crystallography and polishing and things like that. So a lot of things, you're not going to be able to make a cell phone until you're very good at fabrication. So the first step would be fission, and it seems that thorium, if you overcome that, is an excellent source, a safe source. Like all you have to go out to do is overcome one thing, right? So even the materials in between, if you take it to its, what she doesn't talk about is that if you take it through all the way to its spent state, the half-life of that is just, I think, 100 years or so, like a couple of 100 years, maybe even decades. And so the storage time for that, in order for it to be safe, is much, much shorter than uranium, like typical what we think of nuclear power plants, where it's like thousands of years. So essentially you got to get the wasted material and dump it in these mountains for like tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years until it's safe. And so from many aspects, thorium is just a better solution. So if you're not sure about this, I highly encourage you to look on YouTube and just Google like thorium plants and stuff. But thorium is an excellent source. It's much safer. And once you have the process going, just like with oil, you have the stable source of energy, and then you can wait until fusion comes around, and then fusion is even more safe than fission. And then, maybe one day we're all flying around in flying saucers. Who knows? But yeah, I'm a little disappointed by this video. Thorium is very exciting.